This video is brought to you by Chimera Miniatures. Chimera Miniatures is your one-stop shop for one-of-a-kind custom miniatures made by me, Mr. Sean. Check out Chimera Miniatures on eBay today. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm Mr. Sean, and today we're going to talk about board games. Yes, there has never been a better time as an adult to be a board game enthusiast, with board games for a much older audience being released all the time. I myself just personally backed the funding campaign for Zombicide Deadman Tales, which looks to be a fun pirate-themed zombie game. A cooperative pirate-themed zombie game. Again, love me cooperative games and love me some zombies, and Zombicide is a great series. But I also got to thinking about certain games that were, the 90s was a very interesting, and the 80s as well, these were very interesting decades as far as board game mechanics went. A lot of games had a different concept than just the standard roll dice, move your space. Like, there was a lot of interactivity in board games, just all kinds. I mean, and they all had the greatest jingles. Put the pieces into the slot, make the right selection, but be quick, you're racing the clock. Pop goes perfection. Stuff like that. And I got to thinking about ways that we could re-theme some of these old kid board games, probably update their mechanics a little bit, but then redo these games or make a spiritual successor that's aimed at an older audience, as the market for adults buying board games has never been bigger. And today we're gonna go over some of my ideas for games we could do this with, games from the 80s and 90s. Now, the first game I want to talk about is Don't Wake Daddy. Yes, it's a game where you are trying to sneak, you're all trying to sneak to the fridge, and I believe then make your way back to bed. You're getting a snack, but the whole time you can't wake Daddy. So when certain things happen, and you'll draw cards that indicate you've made certain noises, you have to push Daddy's alarm clock a certain number of times, and if he wakes up, it's all back to start. Now, for some reason last week, this game just popped into my head, and I was like, dang, you could really do something with that in the modern era. And then I was watching an episode of Game Changer, and they actually, it's their episode Standards and Practices, and they had a certain version of the Don't Wake Daddy mechanic. Completely coincidental from the fact that I was also thinking about Don't Wake Daddy, but I was like, how would I update Don't Wake Daddy for a modern audience? And it's going to be the case with a lot of this, is actually, I think it's going to be the case with all of this, is that it would be horror themed. And I'm like, okay, how can Don't Wake Daddy be horror themed? And I came up with this: Don't Wake Cthulhu, a game where investigators are attempting to explore R'lyeh, the sunken city of R'lyeh, and get back to their boat, all before waking the great old one, Cthulhu. Now, as you can see, we have a mock-up here. This is AI generated. I am not a board game artist, guys, but, with this one, you really wouldn't even need to. You could keep the same art style. I mean, Daddy would now be Cthulhu and all that, and that would be the change. But I think on this one, you could probably just reskin it and get by purely on the nostalgia factor and the Cthulhu tie-in, which, yes, Cthulhu's a little overplayed these days, guys. I get it, but he is a moneymaker. Next, we're going to talk about the one that I think of all these pitch ideas I have is probably, in my opinion, I'm going to be honest, I think it's the weakest of them, and it's the game Cootie. Now, if you remember Cootie's one where you're rolling dice and you're building a Cootie, a bug, and you got to roll certain numbers to get certain parts. First one to build the Cootie wins. Now, I want to take this idea of creating a bug and turn it into more body horror with by licensing it to and reskinning it and reworking some of the mechanics to John Carpenter's The Thing. Now, the whole idea here would be to build a monstrosity, and there'd be a certain way to do it. It wouldn't just be the straight up put the thing here. There's got to be a mechanic where you can get creative with it, and based on how creative you were at the end, then you would get a certain number of points, and whoever had the most grotesque horror, they're gonna win. But ultimately, I don't know how that mechanic would work, and ultimately I think this would probably be the weakest of my pitches. So Cootie becomes the thing. I think that I do still think it would sell on novelty alone. Now, who doesn't remember the game Mousetrap? The game you could never really get to function properly, right? Well, the whole Mousetrap idea of getting the cheese not getting trapped, the whole Rube Goldberg-esque thing of it, I think this one would be perfectly situated to be rethemed as a Final Destination board game where you and the other players are each trying to be the last one to fall victim to Rube Goldbergian death sequences. Again, definitely not for kids, but I think if you're creative things like that. Now, again, you're probably thinking, well, it's a trap-based game. Why not Saw? Well, that's because our next game, Grape Escape, is going to cover that one for us. Now, Grape Escape is a bit more obscure, but the main thing of Grape Escape that I remember, I didn't own it, my cousins did, is that you get to make your piece, your character, out of Play-Doh, and then you're trying to escape the grape factory without getting smushed or juiced or whatever it is, and I think that is perfect for Saw. Like, you could have you're trying to escape Jigsaw's traps, but you have your little Play-Doh man can get absolutely eviscerated if things don't go your way, and that I think would really the Play-Doh mechanic of Grape Escape really lends it to the idea of being transitioned into a Saw game. Now, one of my favorite games that I had as a kid was It from the Pit. And It from the Pit was a fun game. It was massive, which as a 90s kid, the fact that it was so big made it, even better. But the whole idea is you have this big board, you have this mechanical monster in the pit that is, when you push the button, and the button was one of the bubbles from the pit, which made it even better, and it starts spinning around, and occasionally the arm will come up, reach out, grab, and drag, and if your playing piece happens to be there, your guy gets dragged from the pit. And it is possible to literally, you have 4 characters on each team. It is possible to be taken out of the game entirely. It is possible for no one to win if it just so happens that the pit gets everybody. The whole idea being to get to the treasure chest, and then that's how you win. But again, we're gonna with this one. I think could be just a straight up reskin. And again, we're also here's the mock-up of Dagon version, where instead of a treasure chest, you're trying to get to your boat, but you could also put in a treasure chest. I mean, the Esoteric Order of Dagon was known for gold, but the whole idea is that you kind of retheme it as Dagon from Lovecraft, and you'd maybe up the quality of the display. Instead of the bright colored 90s plastic, you might go with some resin. You might just make it look a little cooler, a little more horrific, and then you have it, instead of It from the Pit, you have Dagon. Hey guys, we're going to get back to the board games in just a second, but right now I want to talk about something that is board game adjacent. Yes, tabletop war games, specifically HeroClix. I am a painter and designer of miniatures, and one of my specialties is repainted HeroClix. Now, I've done many different lines under my VixieClix label, but the one I have just now started doing, I like to call the Summer Fun line, where we take popular characters, both male and female, from your favorite comic books, and we repaint them to be in swimwear, of course themed to their normal comic book outfits. Now, I have a lot of these incoming, but right now I've kind of made just a couple of them as kind of a proof of concept. There's 5 of them. Now, first up here we have the Prime Looker. Again, if you're not familiar with HeroClix, Prime is is an alternative rarity, but this is the Prime version of the character Looker. Now, as I was painting her in this red swimsuit, I remembered, oh yeah, she's a vampire, so she probably won't be getting some summer sun, but still looks great in this repaint. The one that was requested by people when I asked who I should do first, here we have Queen Bee in her bee-themed swimsuit. Doesn't she look fantastic, everybody? We then go to an oldie but a goodie. Who doesn't love Harley Quinn in her classic jester outfit? Now she is in a swimsuit. Pretty great. Those of you who are looking for some summer love, why not get the help of Star Sapphire, the classic love interest and enemy of Green Lantern. Star Sapphire here now in some fun swimwear. And any of you who are Batman Beyond fans, do you remember the Royal Flush Gang? Well, this is Queen, and Queen is looking regal in her very interesting swimsuit, two-piece swimsuit. Now, those are the first ones I've got. More are on the way. There, again, like I said, there's going to be male and female characters ready for your summer fun HeroClix sessions. You can find these on eBay. My eBay store is called Chimera Miniatures, the original name of this channel. It's still Chimera Miniatures over on eBay. Links will be in the description. And with that being said, let's get back to the final 2 board games. I think you're going to find these ones interesting. Now, we have 2 more board games I want to give you my pitch for a grown-up reskinning of. And these ones you may not have heard of. I don't think they're nearly as famous. They're definitely products of the 90s. And I think that they had some very interesting mechanics in how they played, but I don't think they ever really caught on like some of the other board games we've talked about. But the thing is, I definitely think each of these could really benefit from a license, a reskinning, a relicensing, if you will, as these are both licensed games, which may be why they never really caught on, as they were too closely tied to the IP. Now, the first one we're going to talk about is the Are You Afraid of the Dark game. And the thing that made this one very interesting to me, again, I was a big horror fan. This was themed after that Nickelodeon horror kids show, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And the idea is you would go around town completing various missions, having to roll specific dice, pull certain cards in order to win. And the idea is that you are trying to become a member of the Midnight Society, and you'll do this by completing the missions, and from the missions you gain points such as knowledge, strength, courage, and you need to accumulate 6 total points in each of the 6 categories and return to the campfire to win. Now, that's a fun, unique, interesting game, but I feel like it is limited by its association with a, at the time great, but ultimately, somewhat juvenile property. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Really, most of them aren't all that scary when you look back at them today. So, there'd be a nostalgia factor for this, but ultimately, I don't think it would attract an adult audience. So what can we reskin it as? Well, we still want to keep that nostalgia factor, so I thought we would go through Gremlins. And with the Gremlins game, the whole idea would be is you are trying to amass knowledge on the gremlins. You're trying to come up with ways to defeat them so that you can save Gizmo, and ultimately it would work very similar, but now we have that kind of timeless Gremlins franchise that, from what I hear, is kind of having a resurgence and may even be getting a remake. I don't know where I heard that, but I feel like I heard that. So instead of Are You Afraid of the Dark, we have Gremlins. That's going to be great for people that saw the film in the 80s all the way up to now. Who doesn't love Gremlins? Hey, you can even play it at Christmas because Gremlins is a Christmas movie. So I feel like that one would do well from a Gremlins reskin. And our final game, guys, is licensed by the OG of kid horror, the R.L. Stine series itself, Goosebumps. And it had a game in the 90s, the Graveyard game, where you are trying to locate a magic ring and get to the end where you can cause the phantom to, fly off. Now, this is going to sound a little weird, but I want to reskin this with a different children's horror series. I know you're thinking, well, you said you want this to be timeless, and if Goosebumps isn't going to sell it, then what is? Well, that would, of course, be, ladies and gentlemen, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. You know it, you love it. There was probably one picture in particular that traumatized you as a kid. For me, it wasn't the haunted house, so that was a close second. It was The Thing. Just its eyes really messed with me. But Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark could work very well like this, because the whole point of the Goosebumps game is that the board shifted, and so certain spaces that were safe suddenly weren't, and you could be trapped, you could be captured, you could be taken out of the game. And that kind of rings true of the movie Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And I feel like instead of the magic ring, you should probably, what you would want to do is you'd want to find the book of that girl that was the storyteller in the movie, and all the while you're pulling cards, you're rolling dice, and there's going to be references, there's going to be some jump scares when you pull a card with a particularly scary image on it. You're going to have to go back, and all the while the stories can get you. You can all of a sudden be thrust into danger, and you can even be taken out of the game entirely. And I feel like this mock-up that was made really nailed it. While the playing pieces are still colorful, because you kind of need that to be a thing when you're playing a board game, the whole it's all gray and blacks and whites. It's very muted and dark, and I think that captures the spirit of the game and makes it creepy, unlike the very vibrant colors of the 90s Goosebumps children's horror. So I think, honestly, I would buy this game. I think it would be a slam dunk. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the guy coming up with these games. And that's the video, guys. Let me know which of these pitches you think actually sounds like a fun game you would play, or if there's a childhood game you have that you would like to see reskinned into a more adult property. Let me know in the comments. Be sure to smash that like button. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and if you can, please hype that video. Also, again, don't forget to check out the Summer Fun collection of HeroClix over on eBay. Until next time, everybody, I'm Mr. Sean.